Chapter 1. As usual, Geeta's husband was late. She looked at her birthday cake and sighed. She thought that for once, Shailesh would make an effort. Then maybe today, just today, he would keep his promise and come home early. But now she knew he really didn't care. It wasn't about work, as he always had work. Mummy, Geeta's 4-year-old daughter, Anu, came running out of their bedroom, one of the two in her in-laws' flat. She gave her mother a tight hug. When are we going to cut the cake? It's almost time to go to sleep. Geeta pondered. Either she could wait for Shailesh to come, or she could cut the cake now with her two girls and then pack them off to bed. She looked at the clock. It was 9:30 p.m., way past their bedtime. She decided she might as well have a little fun with her girls instead of waiting for a man who might not even be back before midnight. Come, let's cut the cake. Should we light some candles? Where are the matches? Geeta smiled as she asked Anu. Let's call Dadi and Dada too. Anu ran into the other bedroom to call her grandparents. And Geeta wondered why she even bothered. After all, it was because of Anu that her relationship with her husband and in-laws had turned sour. They had wished for Geeta to have a boy for a second child. Renu, their firstborn, was then 6. But she had another girl. And when the doctor had told her, she was overjoyed. A sister bonding was exactly what she wanted for Renu. But her in-laws had refused to even hold Anu, much less distribute sweets to the neighborhood, as they had done when Renu was born. Now Geeta refused to try for another child. She had secretly gone on the pill to avoid another pregnancy. The idea had come from her close friends in the Sapphire Towers Society, who had brought her the packet and told her to start taking it 40 days from Anu's birth. Thank God for those women, she thought. Otherwise, she would have gone completely mad in this building complex that sometimes felt like a prison. Anu dragged her grandparents out of their bedroom for the cake cutting. Geeta shouted for her elder child, Renuka, to come as well. She came, playing a game on her mother's mobile phone. Mama, how old are you? Asked Anu. Silly, said Renuka. You never ask a woman her age. She had the smirk of a Didi that said she knew better. Renu was tall for her age. Her athletic body outgrew clothes faster than Geeta could afford to buy new ones. She had long, wavy hair and was a stunner for her age. All the boys in the building loved to play with Renu, since she could beat anyone at football or cricket and still be the prettiest one around. Geeta smiled for the first time on her birthday. Where did you learn that, Renu? Renu put down the phone for a brief second to look up at her mother. Sahil Chacha, she said. Sahil Chacha was Geeta's unmarried brother-in-law. He lived a few floors below. She suddenly remembered she had promised to call him for the cake cutting. She went to the landline and dialed the intercom to Sahil's flat. He picked up and said he would come. Sahil had moved out of his parents' apartment as soon as Geeta and Shailesh had their second child. He said it was too crowded for the entire family. For a while, Geeta's parents-in-law had insisted that he stay. They said he could sleep with his brother in one room and the two girls and Geeta in the drawing room. But Sahil felt that it was wrong. How could one separate a husband and wife? Besides, Geeta needed some rest as well, and his parents woke up early to have tea. They would wake Geeta up to make it for them. After a full night of looking after her newborn, she was in no position to cook for so many people. So he chose to not be a burden on anyone and look after himself by moving out. His parents had thrown a fit, but he insisted. He told them they could stay with him too. Shailesh and he had a fight about how, as an elder brother, it was his prerogative to look after the parents. Geeta had stood in the corner, secretly hoping Shailesh would see the logic in Sahil moving out and taking his parents with him. It would give her time with her husband, a say in how to bring up her children, and more room for storage. But Shailesh asserted that Sahil could shift within the same building and the parents could visit him whenever they wanted. The parents hated Geeta even more for kicking their younger son out, even though she had nothing to do with it. Where's the birthday girl? Sahil said as he bounded up the floors and into Geeta's house without ringing the doorbell. Here she is, he said, and picked up Anu and twirled her around as she squealed. Then he looked at Anu and said, Hey, you're not the birthday girl. He put her down and ran after Renuka, who shrieked and went into her parents' room. It's not me either. Sahil had a pleasant demeanor. He was tall, raw-boned with broad shoulders, and a hint of stubble that made him ingenuously appealing. His movements were swift, full of grace and virility. His brows and eyes were startling against his fair skin and light wavy hair. It wasn't that he was so good-looking that made Geeta smile. It was his eminently captivating presence that made people happy when he was in the room. Geeta watched from a distance and smiled. How she wished Shailesh would be this happy with her kids. But most evenings he came home, took his dinner, and sat with his parents to chat before switching on the TV and zoning out. Then the next morning he would leave early for work. He barely saw Renu's homework or spoke to Anu about her day in nursery. He either came home too late or else was too tired to do anything else. In this family, at least for Geeta, Shailesh brought in the money and Sahil the laughter. All right, all the wax is melting on the cake. Come now, Geeta said, as she asked her in-laws to sit. Geeta's mother-in-law was in her late 60s, a plump woman with silver hair and weathered lines on her face. She never smiled and berated Geeta for most things she did. Her mother-in-law remarked, "Why such a fuss? It's not as if it's your first birthday." She adjusted her sari and sat down, as if a casual remark should not matter to anyone. But Geeta bit her lip with the statement and held back her voice. "Looks like an expensive cake. Where did you get it from?" spoke her father-in-law. He was in his early 70s and still fit as a fiddle, unfortunately. Geeta chose to ignore the acerbic remarks. She knew by now that holding her tongue was better than falling into a full-blown fight in front of her children. It only left them traumatized and Geeta in tears. And by the end of it, they wouldn't have changed their opinion at all. "Mama, I want to blow out the candles," said Anu. Geeta put her in front of herself, near the cake. She held Renu to one side and they all blew out the 6 candles on the cake. "Why are there 6 candles?" Sahil asked, though he already knew the answer. Geeta gave him a warning look from the corner of her eyes. "Because Mama has turned 6, Anu said proudly. Geeta laughed as she adjusted the red dupatta on her new Biba salwar kameez. Renu cut the cake and fed a small bite to her mother, and then to her sister and Sahil Chacha. She did not give any to her grandparents, and went back to the game on her phone. She said to Anu, "Because Mama has turned 33 today. See? 3 candles on one side and 3 on the other. 33. She left the party and went to her room. Geeta called after her, "Aren't you going to have a piece?" Renu replied, "No, I'll get fat." Sahil burst out laughing. His parents were shocked. "Have you been teaching her such nonsense?" Geeta's mother-in-law berated her. "Seeing how thin you are, she must also be wanting to go on a diet." Sahil came to her defense. "Geeta is naturally thin, Ma. She doesn't have our Gujarati genes. Renu must have learned this from her friends in school. Kids nowadays are smarter than when we were at their age." Geeta flushed and looked gratefully at Sahil. Her large expressive eyes widened when he surreptitiously winked at her when his parents weren't looking. Geeta served them a piece of cake each. Her mother-in-law said, "Give me a bigger piece. Why are you doing so much kanjusi?" Geeta replied, "You have diabetes. I don't want you to fall ill." Mrs. Patel didn't say anything and helped herself to a bigger piece. Geeta wiped her hands on the napkin that was kept on the table and looked at Anu. "Come on, brush and bedtime." "No," Anu complained. "Sahil Chacha has come. Can't we play a little longer?" She picked up the chocolate pieces from the sides of the cake and stuffed them into her mouth. Renu also whined from inside the bedroom. "I'm still waiting for Papa to come. He promised to see my score." "No," Geeta worked up a firm tone. "Tomorrow is a school day. We can show Papa your score in the morning, Renu. And Anu, Sahil Chacha will come back tomorrow evening again." The girls grumbled loudly, but in the end listened to their mother. They brushed their teeth and went to sleep in their respective places in the bedroom. Anu cuddled up to her mother on the master bed, and Renu covered herself with a sheet on the mattress on the floor. Geeta turned off the lights, and within minutes the 2 girls were fast asleep. She went into the bathroom and readjusted her clothes. A little chocolate had fallen on her white and red embroidered kurta, and she took a little water and rubbed it off. Then she covered her bright red dupatta over the stain and smoothed down her hair around her ears. She stopped for a second to look at herself in the mirror. She wasn't bad looking. Her quiet oval face was fair and delicate. Her slim waist, which flared into agile, rounded hips, could have made her a model. Instead, she chose to devote her life to her family. She applied some strawberry Vaseline that gave her lips a hint of red color and walked out of the bathroom. She turned on the nightlight and crept out of the bedroom. She saw Sahil still sitting in the drawing room and noticed that her parents-in-law were no longer around. She guessed they had retired to their own room. She gestured a question to Sahil. "How did you manage to put them inside their room so quickly?" Sahil whispered to her, "Simple. I told them they were missing an award show on TV." Geeta smiled with gratitude. Getting a TV for her in-laws' room had made such a difference in her life. Sahil had gifted it to them for their 40th anniversary earlier this year. Now they could just go into their room and watch TV instead of sitting in the drawing room and looking over Geeta's shoulder every minute of the day. And they were glued to every award show that came over the weekends. Whew, what a relief the idiot box could actually be. Geeta took the seat opposite Sahil. Good housewives maintained a distance from all male members in the family, no matter how close they were to them. Even though Sahil had a great camaraderie with Geeta, she was always guarded around him. "Have you had dinner?" He smiled. "I ordered some chicken from Sagar Shroth downstairs. I saved some for you, by the way. Just go down at lunchtime and gobble it up. You have the keys." Geeta shook her head. "I could have easily made something for you." "Thanks, but I'm tired of ghaspoos," said Sahil, referring to the pure vegetarian food that was made at home. Geeta wasn't allowed to cook or bring in any non-vegetarian items into the Gujarati house. But she and Sahil both loved eating non-vegetarian. Since he didn't have a cook, he would order from the nearby restaurant and she would occasionally join him for a meal. It was their food secret. She thoroughly looked forward to the impromptu luncheons with Sahil when she could gorge on all the meat she wanted. He continued, "Besides, it's your birthday. Why should you be cooking today?" "How is today different from any other day, Sahil? The kids still need their tiffin. Ma, Papa still need their meals. Who's going to do all this? A birthday doesn't mean I get a day off. It just means I'm a year older," Geeta said, looking melancholy. Sahil reached his hand across to gently pat her knee. "Hey, no getting upset on your birthday. Where's that lousy brother of mine? Didn't he give you a present at least?" Geeta shook her head and stifled a little laugh. Sahil could be funny. "Well, how about I take tomorrow off?" Sahil said. "You come over and we'll order some mutton biryani for lunch. The kids will be away at school and the maid can serve the parents' lunch." Geeta had a maid who came to clean the house and assist her in the kitchen. Sometimes she stayed back to serve the food as well and clean up after that. It was a great help as she didn't have to do the laborious menial household chores. "But don't you have work?" Geeta asked. Sahil dismissed her query with a quick wave of his hand. "I'll work from home in the morning and leave post-lunch. I just need to work on a presentation and send it through email. One of the perks of being the boss at a production house." Geeta smiled. Just then, the key turned in the lock of the main door and Geeta almost jumped up from the sofa. As if on cue, she ran to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Sahil picked up the TV remote and tuned into a news channel. Even though they were comfortable with each other, it was an unsaid rule in Indian society that any other man besides a woman's husband could not be sitting alone with a wife while the husband was away. Geeta knew she needed to adhere to that. Shailesh entered and saw Sahil sitting there. "What are you doing here?" he almost snapped. Sahil shrugged. "It's Geeta's birthday. I came to wish her." Shailesh looked towards the kitchen and felt guilty. He had completely forgotten. Geeta emerged with a glass of water for Shailesh. He took it silently and sat down. "I've had dinner," he said. He meant she need not make fresh rotis for him or warm up any food. It was his way of giving her some time to herself. Geeta understood that he had forgotten her birthday altogether, and this was a way of saying she need not stay up any longer. She asked, "Cake?" He nodded. She cut him a slice. He took it with a smile. Geeta wrapped up the cake from the table, put it in the fridge, and went to her room without giving either of the brothers another look. Sahil got up to leave. As he opened the door, he turned to his brother and said, "At least you could have got her flowers." He shut the door and left. Geeta heard her brother-in-law's remark and wondered if this was what marriage was all about. A husband who worked constantly, a wife who only looked after his children and parents, and a lifetime of daily domesticity. If only she had a son. Maybe her husband and parents-in-law would love her. But she knew that she was too tired to have another baby, as well as manage a house. She crept silently into bed and held Anu a little tighter. Her children were her whole world. She was so proud of having two girls. She wished that Shailesh would be proud of them too. She made a wish for her birthday. "Dear God," she whispered aloud, "please give me back some romance in my life. I need something more than being a housewife and mother every day." She closed her eyes and went to sleep, not knowing that the universe would grant her the wish.